millionaire's daughter uncovers family secret. She's shocked by what happens next. The Westbridge Community Centre buzzed with anticipation as the crowd settled into their seats. The air was thick with a mixture of excitement and concern, a palpable tension that only heightened as the lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the grand piano at the center of the stage, its polished surface gleaming under the harsh glare. Rosalind Montgomery took a deep breath, her fingers hovering over the keys. This wasn't just another performance, it was a lifeline, a desperate attempt to save someone she loved. As she began to play, the opening notes of her grandmother's composition, echoes of memory, filled the auditorium, but this time they carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Her mind drifted back to that fateful day 3 months ago, the day that had set this all in motion. She could still hear Mr. Johnson's voice, usually so strong and reassuring, now weak and strained as he delivered the news that had shattered their world. "Roslyn, honey," he had said, his hand trembling as he reached for hers. "The doctors found something. It's not good." The memory of those words sent a shiver down Rosalind's spine, causing a slight tremor in her usually steady hands. She pushed through, letting the music flow from her fingers, each note a prayer for Mr. Johnson's recovery. As she played, she scanned the audience. Her eyes found Mrs. Johnson in the front row, worry etched deeply into her face. Next to her sat Emma, clutching her mother's hand, her usual bubbly demeanor subdued. The Montgomerys were there too, her biological parents watching with a mixture of pride and concern. But it was the empty seat next to Emma that truly broke Rosalind's heart. That's where Mr. Johnson should have been, cheering her on as he had done so many times before. Instead, he was in a hospital bed across town, fighting for his life. The music swelled, reaching a crescendo that seemed to echo the turmoil in Rosalind's heart. As her fingers danced across the keys, she poured every ounce of love, fear, and hope into the melody. This performance wasn't just about raising money for Mr. Johnson's treatment, it was a testament to the bond they shared, a bond that transcended blood and memory. As the final notes faded away, there was a moment of hushed silence before the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Rosalind stood, her legs shaky, and took a bow. Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked out at the sea of faces, all united in their support for the Johnson family. She stepped up to the microphone, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Your support means more than you can know." Mr. Johnson, her voice cracked, and she took a moment to compose herself. "Mr. Johnson has been a father to me in every way that matters. He took me in when I had nothing, not even my memories. Now it's our turn to be there for him." As she spoke, Rosalind felt a surge of determination. They would get through this, no matter what it took. Mr. Johnson had always said that family wasn't about blood, but about the people who stand by you in your darkest hours. Looking out at the crowd, at the faces of friends and strangers alike all gathered to help, Rosalind knew the truth of those words. Together. She continued, her voice growing stronger. "We can make a difference, just like how your support tonight has touched our hearts. You too can touch the lives of others by spreading this message of hope and unity. If you believe in the power of community and the strength of family chosen or given, please show your support. In the words of Mr. Johnson, we're all here to support each other every step of the way, so let's stand together, not just tonight but always. Reach out and click that subscribe button on your screen, join our family, and let's continue to make a difference, one story, one song, one act of kindness at a time." As Rosalind stepped back from the microphone, the applause swelled once more. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but in that moment, surrounded by love and support, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The night was just beginning, and with it, a new chapter in Rosalind's journey, one of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The journey that had brought Rosalind to this pivotal moment was one of extraordinary twists and turns. Just a year ago, she had been Rosalind Montgomery. the amnesiac prodigy who had woken up in a hospital bed with no memory of her privileged past. The Johnsons, a middle-class family with hearts of gold, had taken her in, showing her the meaning of unconditional love and support. Through her time with the Johnsons, Rosalind had discovered not just her exceptional musical talent, but also the joy of genuine connections. Emma, the Johnsons' daughter, had become like a sister to her, while Brooke, a fellow classmate, had grown from a staunch defender to her closest confidante and, more recently, something deeper that Rosalind was still trying to define. When Rosalind's memories had finally returned and she was reunited with her biological parents, the Montgomerys, she had feared losing the warmth and love she'd found with the Johnsons. Instead, she had managed to bridge both worlds, creating a unique extended family that defied conventional boundaries. Richard and Elizabeth Montgomery, Rosalind's biological parents, sat a few rows behind the Johnsons at the charity concert. Their faces reflected a complex mix of emotions: pride in their daughter's talent, concern for the man who had cared for her in their absence, and a hint of discomfort at the public display of their family's unconventional dynamics. As Rosalind made her way off the stage, she was immediately enveloped in a group hug by Emma and Brooke. The three girls clung to each other, a silent exchange of support and love passing between them. "You were amazing," Emma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad would be so proud." Brooke squeezed Rosalind's hand, her touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. "We're going to get through this," she said firmly. "All of us together." As they broke apart, Rosalind noticed a commotion near the entrance of the auditorium. A young woman with striking features that mirrored Rosalind's own was arguing with security, trying to push her way inside. "I'm telling you, I have to speak to Rosalind Montgomery," the woman insisted, her voice carrying across the room. "It's a matter of life and death." Rosalind froze, her eyes locked on the stranger who could have been her twin. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as 1,000 questions raced through her mind. Who was this woman? Why did she look so much like Rosalind? And what urgent matter could she possibly need to discuss? Before Rosalind could react, her father appeared at her side, his face ashen. "Rosalind," he said, his voice low and urgent, "we need to talk, now." The gravity in his tone sent a chill down Rosalind's spine. She allowed herself to be led away, casting one last glance at the mysterious woman who was now being escorted out of the building. In a quiet corner backstage, Richard Montgomery paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of distress Rosalind had never seen before. Elizabeth joined them, her usual poise replaced by nervous energy. "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" Rosalind demanded. "Who was that woman?" Her parents exchanged a loaded glance before Richard spoke. "Rosalind, sweetheart, there's something we need to tell you. Something we should have told you a long time ago." Elizabeth reached out, taking Rosalind's hand in her own. "That woman. Her name is Alexandra, and she's your sister, your twin sister." The words hit Rosalind like a physical blow. A sister? A twin? How was this possible? Her mind reeled, trying to make sense of this revelation. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How could I have a twin I never knew about? Why didn't you tell me?" Richard's shoulders sagged under the weight of long-held secrets. "It's complicated, Princess. When you and Alexandra were born, we were in a very different place. Financially, emotionally, we weren't ready for twins. We made a decision, a terrible, misguided decision, to give Alexandra up for adoption." Tears welled up in Elizabeth's eyes as she continued the story. "We told ourselves it was for the best, that we could give one child everything instead of two children having to struggle. We convinced ourselves that you'd both be better off not knowing." Rosalind stumbled backward, her legs hitting a chair. She sank into it, feeling as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. All this time she'd had a sister. All those years of loneliness, of feeling like something was missing. Had this been the reason? "How could you?" she whispered, anger and hurt warring in her chest. "How could you keep this from me, from her?" Richard knelt before her, his eyes pleading. "We thought we were protecting you both. But seeing her here tonight, Rosalind, we were wrong, so terribly wrong. Can you forgive us?" Rosalind looked between her parents, these people she had once idolized, then resented, and finally come to understand and love again. Now, she felt as though she was seeing them for the first time, flawed, human, capable of monumental mistakes. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't know if I can forgive this. But right now that's not what matters. What matters is finding Alexandra. She said it was a matter of life and death. What if she needs help?" As if on cue, Rosalind's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old clock tower. Come alone. Your sister's life depends on it." Rosalind's heart raced as she showed the message to her parents. The night that had started with a mission to save Mr. Johnson had suddenly become infinitely more complicated. She had a sister who needed her help, a foster father fighting for his life, and a web of family secrets threatening to unravel everything she thought she knew. As she stood to leave, determined to meet this mysterious twin and uncover the truth, Rosalind caught sight of Brooke watching her from across the room. The concern and love in Brooke's eyes grounded her, reminding her that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she wasn't facing them alone. With a deep breath, Rosalind squared her shoulders and headed for the exit. The charity concert behind her, the uncertain future ahead, she stepped into the night, ready to confront the next chapter of her extraordinary journey. Little did she know that the revelations of this evening were just the beginning of a series of events that would test the bonds of family, love, and identity in ways she could never have imagined. Rosalind's heart pounded as she approached the old clock tower, its weathered face looming ominously in the moonlight. The streets were deserted at this late hour, amplifying every echo of her footsteps. She glanced at her phone one last time, rereading the cryptic message from her newfound sister. As she rounded the corner, she saw a figure standing in the shadow of the tower. Alexandra stepped into the light, and Rosalind felt a jolt of recognition. It was like looking into a mirror, yet not quite. Where Rosalind's features were softened by years of comfort, Alexandra's held a hardness that spoke of a different life entirely. "Alexandra," Rosalind called out tentatively. The other girl's head snapped up, her eyes widening. "Rosalind, you came." Her voice was a mixture of relief and wariness. As Rosalind drew closer, she could see the tension in Alexandra's posture, the way her eyes darted around as if expecting danger at any moment. "You said it was a matter of life and death," Rosalind said. "What's going on? Are you in trouble?" Alexandra let out a bitter laugh. "Trouble doesn't begin to cover it. But it's not me I'm worried about. It's you. All of you, the Montgomerys, the Johnsons. You're all in danger." Rosalind's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about? What kind of danger?" Before Alexandra could respond, the sharp ring of Rosalind's phone cut through the night air. It was Emma, her voice frantic on the other end of the line. "Ros, you need to get to the hospital now. It's Dad. He's taken a turn for the worse." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Rosalind absorbed the news. She looked at Alexandra, torn between the sister she'd just met and the man who had been a father to her in every way that mattered. Alexandra must have seen the conflict in her eyes. "Go," she said firmly. "Your family needs you. But this isn't over. We need to talk soon. There's so much you don't know." With a quick nod, Rosalind turned and ran, her mind reeling from the events of the night. As she hailed a taxi to the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to change irrevocably once again. The hospital corridors were a blur as Rosalind raced to Mr. Johnson's room. She found Emma and Mrs. Johnson huddled outside, their faces etched with worry. "What happened?" Rosalind gasped, trying to catch her breath. Mrs. Johnson shook her head, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. The doctors aren't sure. His vitals suddenly dropped. They're in there now, trying to stabilize him. Emma threw her arms around Rosalind, seeking comfort in her friend's embrace. "I'm scared, Ross," she whispered. What if he doesn't make it?" Rosalind hugged her tightly, pushing down her own fear to be strong for her friend. "He's going to be okay," she said with a conviction she didn't entirely feel. "Your dad's a fighter. He's not going to give up without a fight." As they waited for news, Rosalind's mind wandered back to her encounter with Alexandra. What danger had she been talking about? And how did it connect to Mr. Johnson's sudden decline? Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of her parents, both looking haggard and concerned. Elizabeth immediately went to Mrs. Johnson, offering words of comfort, while Richard approached Rosalind. "How is he?" he asked softly. Rosalind shook her head. "We don't know yet. Dad, about earlier." Richard held up a hand. "Now's not the time, Princess. Whatever's happening between us, whatever mistakes we've made, none of that matters right now. What matters is being here for the Johnsons, their family too." His words, so reminiscent of the lessons Mr. Johnson had taught her about the true meaning of family, brought tears to Rosalind's eyes. She nodded, grateful for her father's understanding. The door to Mr. Johnson's room opened, and a tired-looking doctor emerged. Everyone held their breath, waiting for news. "We've managed to stabilize him," the doctor said, and a collective sigh of relief echoed through the hallway. "But," he continued, his tone grave, "his condition is still critical. The next 24 hours will be crucial. We're doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourselves for the possibility that he might not pull through." The words hit like a physical blow. Mrs. Johnson let out a choked sob, while Emma turned and buried her face in Rosalind's shoulder. Rosalind felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The thought of losing Mr. Johnson, the man who had been her rock when she had nothing, was unbearable. As the group huddled together, drawing strength from each other, Rosalind's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out to find another message from Alexandra. "Time's running out. Meet me tomorrow at noon. The old library. Come alone." Rosalind stared at the message, a mixture of curiosity and dread churning in her stomach. What did Alexandra know, and could it somehow be connected to Mr. Johnson's condition? The next morning dawned grey and overcast, matching the somber mood that had settled over both the Montgomery and Johnson households. Rosalind had spent a restless night at the hospital, taking turns with Emma to sit with Mr. Johnson, holding his hand and willing him to keep fighting. As noon approached, Rosalind found herself torn. She didn't want to leave Mr. Johnson's bedside, but the urgency in Alexandra's messages weighed heavily on her mind. Finally, with a promise to Emma that she'd be back soon, Rosalind slipped out of the hospital and made her way to the old library. Alexandra was waiting for her in a secluded corner, surrounded by towering bookshelves that muffled their conversation from prying ears. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't come," Alexandra said, her voice a mix of relief and tension. Rosalind cut straight to the chase. "You said we were all in danger. What did you mean? And how is it connected to Mr. Johnson's condition?" Alexandra's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Johnson?" "The man who took you in when you lost your memory." At Rosalind's nod, she continued, "I didn't know he was ill, but it might explain a lot." "Explain what?" Rosalind pressed, frustration mounting. Alexandra took a deep breath. "What I'm about to tell you is going to sound crazy, but I swear it's the truth. Our parents, the Montgomerys, they're not who you think they are." Rosalind's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "They're involved in something big, something dangerous," Alexandra said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I've spent years trying to uncover the truth. That's why I came looking for you. I thought if we worked together, we might be able to stop them before anyone else gets hurt." Rosalind's head spun as she tried to process this information. Stop them from what? And what does this have to do with Mr. Johnson? Alexandra's eyes darted around, as if checking for eavesdroppers. I think Mr. Johnson might have stumbled onto their secret, and if he did, they might have taken steps to silence him. The implication hit Rosalind like a ton of bricks. Are you saying our parents might be responsible for Mr. Johnson's condition? The look in Alexandra's eyes was all the confirmation Rosalind needed. She felt as though the ground had opened up beneath her feet, swallowing everything she thought she knew about her life and her family. As she stumbled out of the library, her mind reeling from Alexandra's revelations, Rosalind felt more lost than she had when she'd woken up without her memories. The world she'd rebuilt, the family she'd come to love, both biological and chosen, suddenly seemed built on a foundation of lies and secrets. Her phone buzzed, jolting her back to reality. It was Brooke, her message brief but urgent. Where are you? Emma's been trying to reach you. It's about Mr. Johnson. With a heavy heart and a mind full of unanswered questions, Rosalind raced back to the hospital. Whatever was happening, whatever secrets her parents might be hiding, she knew one thing for certain: her place was with the Johnsons, the family that had taken her in when she had nothing. As she ran, Rosalind couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. The charity concert that had started this whirlwind of events seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, with Mr. Johnson's life hanging in the balance and the spectre of her parents' secrets looming over everything, Rosalind knew that her greatest challenge was yet to come. The old Rosalind, the amnesiac girl searching for her identity, was gone. In her place stood a young woman determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As she pushed through the hospital doors, Rosalind steeled herself for whatever lay ahead. The next chapter of her extraordinary journey was about to begin, and this time she was ready to face it head-on. Rosalind burst through the hospital doors, her heart pounding in her chest. The stark white corridors seemed to stretch endlessly before her as she raced towards Mr. Johnson's room. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: fear for Mr. Johnson, confusion over Alexandra's revelations, and a gnawing doubt about everything she thought she knew about her family. As she rounded the corner, she saw Emma pacing outside her father's room, her face etched with worry. Brooke was there too, offering silent support with a hand on Emma's shoulder. They both looked up as Rosalind approached, relief washing over their features. "Ros," Emma exclaimed, rushing to embrace her friend. "Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for hours." Guilt gnawed at Rosalind's insides. How could she explain her absence without revealing the earth-shattering conversation she'd just had with her long-lost sister? "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I had something I needed to take care of. How's your dad?" Emma's face fell, and Rosalind felt her heart sink. "The doctors say he's stabilized, but he's still not out of the woods. They're running more tests now, trying to figure out what caused the sudden decline." Rosalind nodded, trying to push aside the nagging voice in her head that whispered about her parents' possible involvement. She couldn't afford to think about that now. Mr. Johnson needed her, and she was determined to be there for him and his family. As they waited for news, Rosalind felt Brooke's eyes on her, filled with concern and something else, a question she wasn't quite ready to ask. Rosalind met her gaze, trying to convey without words that she was okay, that they would talk later. Brooke seemed to understand, giving a small nod before turning her attention back to Emma. The hours crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity. Rosalind's phone buzzed periodically with messages from Alexandra, each one more urgent than the last, but she ignored them. Whatever secrets her biological family was hiding, they would have to wait. Her chosen family needed her now. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the doctor emerged from Mr. Johnson's room. The lines on his face were deep with fatigue, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "We've managed to identify the cause of Mr. Johnson's decline," he said, his voice steady and professional. It appears to be a rare reaction to one of his medications. We've adjusted his treatment, and he's showing signs of improvement. The next 24 hours will be critical, but we're cautiously optimistic." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the small group. Mrs. Johnson, who had been silent and stoic throughout the ordeal, finally let her tears fall, years of pent-up emotion released in a cathartic wave. Emma hugged her mother tightly, her own shoulders shaking with sobs of relief. Rosalind felt a weight lift from her chest, but it was quickly replaced by a new, heavier burden. If Mr. Johnson's condition was indeed caused by a medication reaction, could that mean Alexandra's suspicions about their parents were unfounded? Or was this just another layer to a deeper, more sinister plot? As the group began to disperse, each heading home for some much-needed rest now that the immediate crisis had passed, Rosalind felt a gentle tug on her arm. She turned to find Brooke looking at her with a mixture of concern and determination. "Rose, we need to talk," Brooke said softly, her voice leaving no room for argument. Rosalind nodded, knowing she couldn't put off this conversation any longer. They made their way to the hospital's small courtyard, the cool night air a welcome relief after the stifling atmosphere of the waiting room. For a moment they sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Finally Brooke spoke. "What's going on, Ros? And don't tell me it's nothing. I know you better than that." Rosalind took a deep breath, trying to find the right words to explain the tornado that had become her life. "It's complicated," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Remember the woman at the charity concert? The one who looked like me?" Brooke nodded, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Yeah, what about her?" "She's my sister," Rosalind said, the words still feeling foreign on her tongue. "My twin sister, Alexandra." Brooke's eyes widened in shock. "You're... What? How is that possible?" Rosalind let out a bitter laugh. "Apparently, my parents gave her up for adoption when we were born. They never told me about her, never told her about me. And now she's back, and she's saying our parents might be involved in something dangerous. Something that might have put Mr. Johnson in danger." The words tumbled out in a rush, and once Rosalind started, she couldn't stop. She told Brooke everything: the secret meeting at the clock tower, Alexandra's warnings, the doubts that had been plaguing her since she'd learned of her sister's existence. When she finally finished, Rosalind felt drained, as if the very act of speaking her fears aloud had sapped her of all energy. She looked at Brooke, half expecting to see judgment or disbelief in her eyes. Instead, she found only compassion and unwavering support. "Oh," Brooke said softly, reaching out to take Rosalind's hand. "I can't imagine how overwhelming this must be for you. But you don't have to face this alone. Whatever's going on, whatever the truth is about your family, I'm here for you. We'll figure this out together." Rosalind felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of Brooke's loyalty. Without thinking, she leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a soft, tentative kiss, years of unspoken feelings finally finding expression. For a moment the world fell away. There were no family secrets, no mysterious sisters, no looming dangers. There was only Rosalind and Brooke, two girls finding solace and strength in each other amidst the chaos of their lives. When they finally pulled apart, Rosalind felt a mix of elation and terror. Brooke, But before she could finish her thought, a sharp voice cut through the night air. "Well, isn't this touching?" Rosalind and Brooke sprang apart, turning to find Richard Montgomery standing at the entrance to the courtyard, his face a mask of disapproval. "Dad," Rosalind exclaimed, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. "What are you doing here?" Richard's eyes narrowed as he looked between Rosalind and Brooke. "I came to check on Mr. Johnson's condition. I didn't realize I'd be interrupting. Whatever this is." The disgust in his voice was palpable, and Rosalind felt a surge of anger rise within her. "This isn't what you think, Dad. And even if it was, it's none of your business." Richard's face hardened. "None of my business? You're my daughter, Roslyn. Everything you do is my business, especially when you're throwing away your future on distractions." Brooke flinched at the word, and Roslyn felt her anger boil over. Distractions? Is that what you call the people who actually care about me? The people who were there for me when I had nothing, not even my memories? She stood, placing herself between Brooke and her father. "You don't get to judge my choices, Dad. Not after what you and Mom did. Not after lying to me my entire life about Alexandra." The color drained from Richard's face at the mention of Alexandra's name. "How? How do you know about her?" "She found me," Roslyn said, her voice cold. "And she told me everything. About how you gave her up, about the secrets you've been keeping. So don't you dare stand there and act like you have any right to dictate my life or my relationships." For a moment Richard looked as though he might argue further, but then something in his expression shifted. The anger drained away, replaced by a weariness that made him look years older. "Roslyn," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you don't understand. We were trying to protect you. Both of you. There are things you don't know, things that could put you in danger." Roslyn felt her resolve waver at the genuine fear in her father's eyes. "Then tell me," she pleaded. "Tell me the truth, Dad. All of it? No more secrets, no more lies." Richard seemed to age before her eyes, the weight of years of deception finally taking its toll. He glanced at Brooke, who had been watching the exchange with wide eyes, then back to Roslyn. "Not here," he said finally. "Not now, but soon, I promise. We'll tell you everything. Just be careful, Roslyn. And watch out for Alexandra. She might not be who you think she is." With those cryptic words, Richard turned and walked away, leaving Roslyn and Brooke alone in the courtyard once more. The night air felt charged with tension, the promise of revelations to come hanging heavy between them. Roslyn turned to Brooke, her mind reeling from the confrontation with her father. "I'm so sorry you had to see that," she began, but Brooke cut her off with a gentle kiss. "Don't apologize," Brooke said firmly. "I told you we're in this together. Whatever's going on with your family, whatever truths come out, I'm here for you, always." As they made their way back into the hospital, hand in hand, Roslyn felt a strange mix of fear and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with dangers she couldn't yet comprehend. But with Brooke by her side and the unwavering support of the Johnsons, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The girl who had woken up without memories had come so far, piecing together not just her past, but a future of her own making. Now, standing on the precipice of even greater revelations, Roslyn knew that her journey was far from over. But for the first time since Alexandra had appeared in her life, she felt a glimmer of hope that she might just be strong enough to weather the storm that was coming. As they re-entered Mr. Johnson's room, where Emma and her mother sat vigil by his bedside, Roslyn made a silent vow. No matter what secrets her biological family was hiding, no matter what dangers lay ahead, she would protect this family, her chosen family, with everything she had. The truth was coming, and Roslyn Montgomery was ready to face it head-on. The days following Mr. Johnson's health crisis were a whirlwind of activity and emotion for Roslyn. As she shuttled between the hospital and her various commitments, she found herself increasingly torn between the two families that now comprised her world. The Johnsons needed her support as Mr. Johnson slowly recovered, while the Montgomerys seemed to be caught in a web of secrets that threatened to unravel at any moment. Roslyn's daily routine became a delicate balancing act. Mornings were spent at the hospital, where she would sit with Mr. Johnson, reading to him from his favorite books, or simply holding his hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Emma and Mrs. Johnson were grateful for her presence, often relying on her strength when their own began to falter. "You're an angel," Roslyn, Mrs. Johnson would say, her eyes brimming with tears of gratitude. "I don't know how we would have gotten through this without you." These words, while heartwarming, also filled Rosalind with a deep sense of responsibility. She felt the weight of the Johnsons' reliance on her, and it both honored and terrified her. What if she let them down? What if, in trying to uncover the truth about her biological family, she somehow put the Johnsons in danger? Afternoons were dedicated to her studies and music practice. Despite the chaos in her personal life, Rosalind was determined not to let her grades slip or her musical skills deteriorate. She threw herself into her schoolwork with renewed vigor, finding solace in the structured world of academics, where problems had clear solutions, unlike the murky waters of her family situation. Evenings were reserved for the Montgomerys. Dinner at the mansion had become a tense affair, with Richard and Elizabeth exchanging worried glances when they thought Rosalind wasn't looking. The promise of soon will tell you everything hung in the air, but soon never seemed to arrive. Rosalind tried to broach the subject of Alexandra several times, but her parents always found a way to deflect or change the subject. Their evasiveness only fueled her determination to uncover the truth. "Rosalind, darling," her mother would say, her voice strained with forced cheerfulness, "why don't you tell us about your latest composition instead? We'd love to hear about your music." But Rosalind couldn't shake the feeling that while she was pouring out her heart through her music, her parents were withholding crucial pieces of her own life story. Amidst this chaos, Alexandra's presence in Rosalind's life grew more pronounced and complicated. The sisters began meeting regularly, often in secret, as Rosalind tried to piece together the puzzle of their shared past. Their rendezvous points varied, sometimes the old clock tower, other times a quiet corner of the park, or a secluded booth in a little-known cafe. Each meeting left Rosalind with more questions than answers, her head spinning with half-truths and ominous warnings. "Our parents aren't who you think they are," Rosalind Alexandra would insist, her eyes darting around as if expecting to be overheard at any moment. "They're involved in something big, something dangerous. We need to find out what it is before someone else gets hurt." Rosalind wanted to believe her sister, to trust in this newfound connection. But Alexandra's paranoia and secretive nature made it difficult to separate fact from fiction. Was she truly trying to protect Rosalind, or did she have her own agenda? The similarities between them were striking. They shared the same dark hair, the same hazel eyes, even the same dimple when they smiled, though Alexandra's smiles were rare and fleeting. But where Rosalind was open and trusting, Alexandra was guarded and suspicious. Years of separation had shaped them into two very different people, and bridging that gap proved to be a monumental task. "Why can't you just tell me everything you know?" Rosalind asked during one of their clandestine meetings, frustration coloring her voice. "Why all the secrecy?" Alexandra's face hardened. "Because knowledge is power, and power is dangerous in the wrong hands. I'm trying to protect you, Rosalind. The less you know right now, the safer you are." These cryptic responses only served to fuel Rosalind's curiosity and determination. She began conducting her own investigations, scouring old newspaper articles and public records for any clues about her family's past. But every lead seemed to hit a dead end, as if someone had deliberately obscured the Montgomery family history. As Alexandra became a more constant presence in her life, Rosalind found it increasingly difficult to keep her existence a secret from the Johnsons and her friends. She hated lying to them, but Alexandra had made her swear to keep their meetings confidential. It's for their own safety, she had insisted. The less they know, the less danger they're in. But the weight of these secrets was taking its toll on Rosalind. She found herself becoming more withdrawn, her usual openness replaced by a guarded demeanor that didn't go unnoticed by those closest to her. Brooke, ever perceptive, was the first to confront her about the change. "Ross, what's going on with you?" she asked one day as they walked home from school. "You've been so distant lately. Is this about your sister? About what your dad said that night at the hospital?" Rosalind felt torn between her desire to confide in Brooke and her promise to Alexandra. "It's complicated," she said finally, hating how evasive she sounded. "I want to tell you everything, Brooke. I really do. but I'm still trying to figure things out for myself." Brooke's face fell, hurt flickering in her eyes. "I thought we were in this together, Roz. I thought you trusted me." The pain in Brooke's voice was like a knife to Rosalind's heart. She reached out, taking Brooke's hand in hers. "I do trust you, more than anyone. It's just, there's so much I don't understand yet. I don't want to drag you into something that might be dangerous." Brooke squeezed her hand, her expression softening. "Rosalind, don't you get it? I'm already in this. I'm in it because I care about you. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're trying to figure out, I want to help. Even if all I can do is listen." Rosalind felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by Brooke's unwavering support. In that moment she made a decision. She couldn't tell Brooke everything, not yet. But she could let her in bit by bit. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's go somewhere private. There's a lot I need to tell you." As they found a secluded spot in the local park, Rosalind began to share some of what she had learned from Alexandra. She told Brooke about the suspicions surrounding her parents, about the warnings of danger, about the frustration of piecing together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Brooke listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When Rosalind finished, Brooke was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had heard. "Wow," she said finally, "that's a lot to take in. But Roz, have you considered that Alexandra might not be telling you the whole truth either? I mean, you barely know her. What if she has her own agenda?" Rosalind nodded, a rueful smile playing on her lips. "I've had the same thoughts. But she's my sister, Brooke. My twin. I can't just ignore her or what she's telling me. I have to find out the truth, for better or worse." Brooke reached out, cupping Rosalind's face in her hands. "I understand. And I'm here for you every step of the way. Just promise me you'll be careful, okay? And that you'll come to me if things get too overwhelming. You don't have to carry this burden alone." As Rosalind leaned into Brooke's touch, she felt some of the tension of the past weeks begin to ease. She wasn't alone in this. No matter what secrets her biological family was hiding, no matter what dangers Alexandra was warning her about, she had Brooke. She had the Johnsons. She had a support system that wouldn't let her fall. But even as she took comfort in this knowledge, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of her mind. How long could she continue to balance these two worlds? How long before the weight of secrets and divided loyalties became too much to bear? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Rosalind made a silent vow to herself. She would uncover the truth about her family's past, about the danger Alexandra insisted was looming. But she would do it on her own terms, without sacrificing the relationships and the life she had built for herself. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with potential pitfalls and hidden dangers. But as she walked hand in hand with Brooke, heading home to face whatever challenges awaited her, Rosalind felt a sense of determination settle over her. She was Rosalind Montgomery, daughter of two families, sister to both Emma and Alexandra, and she was ready to fight for the truth and for those she loved. Little did she know that the greatest tests of her resolve and the strength of her relationships were yet to come. As Rosalind grappled with the complexities of her dual family life and the mysterious warnings from Alexandra, an unexpected opportunity arose that would test her loyalties and values even further. One afternoon, as she was practicing in the school's music room, Mr. Hendricks, her music teacher, approached her with an excited gleam in his eyes. "Rosalind, I have some incredible news," he said, barely containing his enthusiasm. "A representative from Harmonic Records was at your charity concert. They were blown away by your performance and your original composition. They want to offer you a recording contract." Rosalind's heart skipped a beat. Harmonic Records was one of the most prestigious labels in the classical music world. A contract with them could launch her career into the stratosphere. It was the kind of opportunity most young musicians only dreamed of. Mr. Hendricks handed her a thick envelope. "All the details are in here. They're offering a substantial signing bonus, Rosalind. This could change your life." With trembling hands, Rosalind opened the envelope. As she scanned the contents, her eyes widened. The numbers were staggering more money than she had ever imagined, but it was the fine print that made her pause. The contract required her to relocate to New York immediately for intensive training and recording sessions. She would need to commit to a grueling schedule of performances and publicity events. The word exclusive appeared multiple times throughout the document. "This is amazing," Rosalind said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need some time to think about it." Mr. Hendricks nodded understandingly. "Of course, it's a big decision. But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often." As Rosalind left the music room, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. This contract could secure her future, provide her with the means to pursue her passion for music at the highest level. It was everything she had ever worked for. But as she walked home, her feet instinctively taking her towards the hospital where Mr. Johnson was still recovering, the reality of what accepting this offer would mean began to sink in. Moving to New York would mean leaving behind the Johnsons just when they needed her most. It would mean abandoning the investigation into her family's secrets, leaving Alexandra's warnings unheeded. Rosalind found herself outside Mr. Johnson's hospital room, peering through the window. He was awake, chatting with Emma and Mrs. Johnson, his face still pale but his eyes bright with life. The sight of them together, a family unit supporting each other through this difficult time, made Rosalind's heart ache. She thought about all the times the Johnsons had been there for her, taking her in when she had no memories, supporting her as she rediscovered her passion for music, loving her unconditionally even after her biological family had reclaimed her. How could she even consider leaving them now? But then another voice in her head, one that sounded suspiciously like her father's, reminded her of the magnitude of this opportunity. This was her chance to make something of herself, to use her talent to its fullest potential. Wasn't that what the Johnsons would want for her? Over the next few days, Rosalind found herself torn between her desire to seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and her loyalty to the Johnsons. She confided in Brooke, hoping her friend could offer some clarity. "It's an amazing opportunity," Brooke said, her voice a mixture of excitement and concern. "But I know how much the Johnsons mean to you. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, but you need to do what feels right for you." Rosalind appreciated Brooke's support, but it did little to ease the turmoil in her heart. She tried to imagine leaving Westbridge, leaving behind the life she had built here. The thought filled her with a sense of loss that no amount of money or fame could compensate for. As the deadline to respond to the record label approached, Rosalind knew she needed to make a decision. She decided to talk to Mr. Johnson, hoping his wisdom could guide her. Sitting by his hospital bed, Rosalind poured out her heart, explaining the opportunity and her fears about leaving. Mr. Johnson listened patiently, his kind eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, Mr. Johnson reached out and took her hand. "Rosalind," he said, his voice weak but filled with warmth, "you have a gift that deserves to be shared with the world. Don't let your worry for us hold you back." Tears welled up in Rosalind's eyes. "But what about you? What about Emma and Mrs. Johnson? I can't just leave you all when you need me." Mr. Johnson smiled, squeezing her hand. "We'll be fine, sweetheart. Your music has already done so much for us. That charity concert you organized? It didn't just raise money for my treatment. It brought this community together. It gave us hope. Now it's time for you to spread that hope further." Rosalind left the hospital that day with a heavy heart, but a clearer mind. Mr. Johnson's blessing had lifted a weight from her shoulders, but the decision still felt monumental. As she weighed her options, another complication arose: the deepening conflict with her biological parents over her life choices. When Rosalind broached the subject of the record contract with Richard and Elizabeth Montgomery, their reaction was not what she had expected. "Absolutely not," Richard said, his voice firm. You're far too young to make that kind of commitment. Your education should be your priority right now." Rosalind was taken aback. "But Dad, this is a huge opportunity. Isn't this what you and Mum always wanted for me? To succeed in music?" Elizabeth exchanged a worried glance with her husband before turning to Rosalind. "Sweetheart, we want you to be happy and successful, of course. But this contract, it would take you away from us. After everything that's happened, we just got you back. We can't lose you again." The irony of their words wasn't lost on Rosalind. After years of feeling neglected by her biological parents, now they were claiming they couldn't bear to be separated from her. It felt suffocating, as if they were trying to make up for lost time by controlling her future. "You didn't seem to have a problem with being separated from me when you gave Alexandra away," Rosalind said, immediately regretting the harshness of her words but unable to take them back. The color drained from her parents' faces. Richard's expression hardened. "That was different, Rosalind. We were trying to protect you both. You don't understand the danger we were in back then." "Then help me understand," Rosalind pleaded. "You keep saying you'll tell me everything, but you never do. How am I supposed to make decisions about my future when I don't even know the truth about my past?" The argument escalated with accusations and old hurts bubbling to the surface. Rosalind found herself voicing years of pent-up frustration about her parents' absence during her childhood, their secretive behavior, their treatment of Alexandra. In turn, Richard and Elizabeth accused her of being ungrateful, of failing to appreciate the sacrifices they had made for her. As the shouting reached a fever pitch, Rosalind felt something inside her snap. "You know what," she said, her voice cold with anger. "You don't get to decide my future. Not anymore. I'm going to make this decision for myself, whether you like it or not." With that, she stormed out of the house, leaving her parents calling after her. As she walked through the quiet streets of Westbridge, Rosalind felt as though she was standing at a crossroads. On one side lay the path of the obedient daughter, following her parents' wishes and staying close to home. On the other was the unknown chance at musical stardom, but at the cost of leaving behind everything and everyone she loved. The conflict with her parents had brought into sharp focus the larger question that had been plaguing her since Alexandra's appearance in her life: who was Rosalind Montgomery? Was she the prodigy pianist, destined for greatness in the music world? The loyal friend and surrogate daughter to the Johnsons? The biological child of the Montgomerys, bound by blood and family secrets? Or was she something else entirely, a young woman trying to forge her own path in a world that seemed determined to make her choose? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the familiar streets of her hometown, Rosalind realized that the decision about the record contract was about more than just her musical career. It was about taking control of her own narrative, about choosing the kind of person she wanted to be. With a deep breath, Rosalind made her choice. She would forge her own path, one that honored her talents and her relationships, her past and her potential future. It wouldn't be easy, and it might not please everyone. But for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed with no memories, Rosalind felt truly in control of her destiny. As she turned to head home, ready to face whatever consequences her decision might bring, Rosalind felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to walk it on her own terms. The girl who had once been lost had finally found her way not to a single family or a predefined future, but to herself. The late autumn sun was setting over Westbridge, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban streets. Rosalind sat at her piano, her fingers dancing across the keys as she lost herself in the music. It was in these moments, when she was creating melodies that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul, that she felt most at peace. The chaos of her life, the secrets, the family drama, the looming decision about her future all faded away, leaving only the pure emotion of the music. Her reverie was shattered by the shrill ring of her phone. Glancing at the caller ID, she saw it was Mrs. Johnson. A smile tugged at her lips as she answered, expecting to hear about Mr. Johnson's latest progress in his recovery. "Hello, Mrs. Johnson," Rosalind said warmly. How's Mr. Johnson doing too?" Her words were cut off by the sound of barely contained sobs on the other end of the line. "Rosalind," Mrs. Johnson choked out, her voice thick with tears. "It's Emma. There's been an accident." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Mrs. Johnson explained through her tears. Emma had been hit by a car while riding her bike home from school. She was in surgery now, her condition critical. Rosalind felt as though all the air had been sucked from her lungs. Emma, her best friend, the girl who had become like a sister to her during her time with the Johnsons, how could this be happening? "I'm on my way," Rosalind managed to say, already grabbing her keys and rushing out the door. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Rosalind's mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions: fear for Emma, concern for the Johnsons, and an overwhelming sense of guilt that threatened to consume her. She should have been there. She should have been riding home with Emma, like they used to do every day when she lived with the Johnsons. But she had been so caught up in her own drama, the record contract, the conflict with her biological parents, the secret meetings with Alexandra, that she had been neglecting her relationships with the people who had been there for her from the beginning. As Rosalind burst through the hospital doors, she was met by the sight of Mrs. Johnson slumped in a chair in the waiting room, Mr. Johnson by her side, his own face pale with worry, despite his recent discharge from the hospital. They both looked up as Rosalind approached, their expressions a mixture of relief and anguish. "Any news?" Rosalind asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Johnson shook his head. "She's still in surgery. The doctors. They said the next few hours are critical." Rosalind sank into the chair next to them, reaching out to take Mrs. Johnson's hand. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I should have been there. I should have been riding home with her, like I used to." Mrs. Johnson squeezed her hand. "Oh, honey, this isn't your fault. It was an accident. You can't blame yourself." But Rosalind couldn't shake the feeling that if she had been there, things might have been different. If she hadn't been so wrapped up in her own problems, if she had been paying more attention to her friends, maybe she could have prevented this. The hours crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity. Rosalind paced the waiting room, made countless trips to the vending machine for coffee none of them would drink, and prayed to whatever higher power might be listening for Emma to be okay. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through the hospital windows, a tired-looking surgeon emerged from the operating room. The Johnsons and Rosalind stood as one, their hearts in their throats as they waited for news. "She's stable," the surgeon said, and a collective sigh of relief echoed through the small group. "The next 24 hours will be critical, but she's young and strong. We're cautiously optimistic." Rosalind felt her knees go weak with relief. Emma was alive. She was going to be okay. But as the initial wave of relief passed, the guilt came crashing back. Emma might be alive, but she was still hurt, still fighting for her life in a hospital bed. And Rosalind couldn't shake the feeling that she had let her friend down. As the Johnsons went to see Emma in the ICU, Rosalind excused herself, needing a moment alone to collect her thoughts. She found herself in the hospital's small chapel, the quiet sanctuary a stark contrast to the bustling corridors outside. Sinking into a pew, Rosalind let the tears she had been holding back fall freely. She cried for Emma, for the pain she must be in. She cried for the Johnsons, who had already been through so much with Mr. Johnson's illness. And she cried for herself, for the mess her life had become, for the way she felt torn between two families, two lives. It was there, in the quiet of the chapel, that Rosalind made a decision. No more secrets. No more divided loyalties. It was time to confront her biological parents about their past, about Alexandra, about everything they had been hiding. She needed answers, and she needed them now. With a newfound determination, Rosalind left the hospital, promising the Johnsons she would be back soon. She drove to the Montgomery mansion, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. As she pulled into the driveway, Rosalind saw her parents' cars were both there. Taking a deep breath to steel herself, she marched up to the front door and let herself in. She found Richard and Elizabeth Montgomery in the study, both looking up in surprise at her abrupt entrance. Rosalind Elizabeth said, concern etching her features. "What's wrong? You look awful." "Emma's been in an accident," Rosalind said, her voice hoarse from crying. "She's stable now, but it made me realize something. Life is too short for secrets and lies. I need to know the truth. All of it, now." Richard and Elizabeth exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Richard sighed, gesturing for Rosalind to sit down. "You're right," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "It's time you knew everything. But Rosalind, you have to understand everything we did to protect you and Alexandra." Rosalind sat, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm listening," she said. And so, the story came out. Richard and Elizabeth told her about their past, about the dangerous world they had once been a part of. They spoke of corporate espionage, of powerful people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. They explained how, when Rosalind and Alexandra were born, they realized they couldn't protect both girls from the enemies they had made. "We made an impossible choice," Elizabeth said, tears streaming down her face. "We gave Alexandra up for adoption, hoping she would be safer away from us. We changed our names, moved here to Westbridge, tried to build a new life, we thought. We thought we were doing the right thing." Rosalind listened, her mind reeling as she tried to process this information. But why keep it a secret all these years? Why not tell me about Alexandra? Richard ran a hand through his hair, looking older and more vulnerable than Rosalind had ever seen him. "We were afraid. Afraid that if we told you, it would somehow put you in danger. Afraid that our past would catch up with us. And afraid that you would hate us for what we'd done." The room fell silent as Rosalind absorbed this. Part of her wanted to scream, to rage at her parents for the years of lies and secrecy. But another part of her, the part that had grown and matured through her experiences with the Johnsons, understood the impossible situation they had been in. And now Rosalind asked finally, "Is there still danger? Is that why Alexandra has been warning me?" Her parents exchanged another look. "We don't know," Richard admitted. "We've been out of that world for so long. But Alexandra? Rosalind, we're not sure her intentions are entirely pure. She may have her own agenda." Rosalind felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Elizabeth leaned forward, her eyes intense. "We've been trying to track Alexandra's movements since she reappeared. Some of the people she's been in contact with, they're connected to our old life, to the dangers we tried to leave behind." The implications of this hit Rosalind like a physical blow. Could Alexandra, the sister she had been so eager to know, be using her? Was she just a pawn in some larger game? As the weight of these revelations settled over her, Rosalind felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at her parents for the years of deception. Fear for what Alexandra's true intentions might be. Relief at finally knowing the truth. And underneath it all, a deep, aching sadness for the family they could have been, for the years lost to secrets and fear. "I need time," Rosalind said finally, standing up. "Time to process all of this. But thank you for finally telling me the truth." As she turned to leave, her father's voice stopped her. "Rosalind," he said, his tone pleading, "we know we've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we love you. Everything we've done, as misguided as it might have been, was out of love for you." Rosalind paused at the door, not turning around. "I know," she said softly, "but love isn't always enough. Trust is important too, and that's something we're going to have to rebuild." With that, she left, her mind whirling with the implications of everything she had learned. As she drove back to the hospital, back to Emma and the Johnsons, Rosalind felt as though she was seeing the world through new eyes. The girl who had woken up without memories had come so far, piecing together not just her past but a future of her own making. Now, armed with the truth about her family's history, she faced new challenges and decisions. As she walked back into the hospital, ready to be there for Emma and the Johnsons, Rosalind knew that the road ahead would not be easy. She had a sister, whose motives she now questioned, parents she wasn't sure she could trust, and a best friend fighting for her life. But she also had strengths she never knew she possessed, a chosen family who loved her unconditionally, and a determination to forge her own path. Whatever came next, Rosalind Montgomery was ready to face it head-on, with open eyes and an open heart. The truth, as painful and complicated as it was, had set her free. Now it was up to her to decide what to do with that freedom. As Rosalind stepped back into the hospital, the weight of her parents' revelations still heavy on her mind, she was immediately confronted with the tangible reality of her divided loyalties. The Johnsons were huddled around Emma's bed in the ICU, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. The sight of them, so vulnerable and in need of support, made Rosalind's heart ache with guilt for having left, even if it was to uncover crucial truths about her past. Mrs. Johnson looked up as Rosalind entered, relief washing over her tired features. "Oh, Rosalind, you're back!" "Emma!" She woke up for a moment. "She was asking for you." The words hit Rosalind like a physical blow. Emma had needed her, and she hadn't been there. She'd been off confronting her biological parents, prioritizing her own need for answers over her friend's critical condition. The realization made her feel sick with shame. "I'm so sorry," Rosalind whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I should have been here." Mr. Johnson reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're here now, that's what matters. Emma knows you care." But even as Mr. Johnson's words were meant to reassure her, Rosalind could sense a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The unconditional warmth and acceptance she had always felt from the Johnsons seemed slightly dimmed, tinged with a hint of disappointment, or perhaps concern. As the days passed and Emma's condition slowly improved, Rosalind found herself caught in an increasingly tense balancing act. She spent every possible moment at the hospital trying to make up for her perceived failure to be there when Emma first woke up. But each time she left to go home to the Montgomerys, she could feel the Johnsons' eyes on her back, silently questioning her divided attention. Meanwhile, at the Montgomery mansion, the atmosphere was equally strained. Her parents, having finally revealed their secrets, seemed to be walking on eggshells around her. They would start conversations only to let them trail off awkwardly, clearly unsure how to bridge the chasm of trust that had opened between them. One evening, as Rosalind was preparing to head back to the hospital, Elizabeth tentatively approached her. "Sweetheart, I know you want to be there for Emma, but don't you think you should take a break? You're running yourself ragged." Rosalind bristled at the suggestion. "Emma needs me," she said firmly. "The Johnsons need me. I can't let them down again." A flash of hurt crossed Elizabeth's face. "And what about us? We're your family too, Rosalind. We need you as well." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Rosalind felt a surge of frustration. How could her mother not understand? The Johnsons had been there for her when she had nothing, not even her memories. They had shown her unconditional love and support, and now when they needed her most, her biological parents were trying to pull her away? "You may be my biological family," Rosalind said, her voice cold, "but the Johnsons are my family too. They've earned that right. You can't just expect me to choose you over them, especially not now." As soon as the words left her mouth, Rosalind regretted their harshness. She saw the pain bloom in her mother's eyes, saw her father stiffen in the background where he had been pretending not to listen. But she couldn't bring herself to take it back. The truth was, she did feel torn between these two families, and the pressure to choose was becoming unbearable. At the hospital, things were no less tense. As Emma's recovery progressed, Rosalind found herself struggling to connect with her friend the way she once had. There was a distance between them now, born of Rosalind's absence during those critical first moments and the secrets she was still keeping about her biological family's past. One afternoon, as Rosalind sat by Emma's bedside, trying to fill the awkward silence with chatter about school and mutual friends, Emma finally spoke up. "Ros," she said, her voice still weak with an undercurrent of hurt, "where were you really? When I woke up and you weren't here?" Rosalind felt her heart skip a beat. She had been dreading this question, knowing that the truth would only create more distance between them. But she couldn't bring herself to lie, not to Emma. I was with my biological parents," she admitted softly. "There were some things I needed to confront them about. About my past, about the sister I never knew I had." Emma's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in hurt. "You have a sister? And you never told me. Ros, I thought we told each other everything." The betrayal in Emma's voice cut deep. Rosalind reached out, trying to take her friend's hand, but Emma pulled away. "I wanted to tell you," Rosalind said desperately, "but it was all so complicated, and I was trying to protect you, to protect everyone." Emma turned her face away, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't need your protection, Ros. I needed my best friend, my sister. And you weren't here." The word sister hung in the air between them, a painful reminder of the bond they had once shared and the secrets that now threatened to tear it apart. As Rosalind left the hospital that day, she felt as though she were walking a tightrope, with both her families on either side and the chasm of loss yawning beneath her feet. One misstep, one wrong word, and she could lose them both. The tension came to a head one evening when both the Montgomerys and the Johnsons found themselves at the hospital at the same time. Rosalind watched, her heart racing, as her two worlds collided in the sterile hallway outside Emma's room. Richard and Elizabeth Montgomery stood awkwardly, clearly out of place in the hospital setting, while the Johnsons eyed them with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Rosalind felt pulled in both directions, unsure where to stand, whom to align herself with. "Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery," Mrs. Johnson said, her voice polite but cool. "It's nice of you to come check on Emma." Elizabeth smiled tightly. "Of course. We know how much she means to Rosalind." The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, but she means something to us too. She's our daughter. Rosalind watched as both sets of parents engaged in stilted small talk, each clearly trying to stake their claim on her affections. She saw the way Mr. Johnson's jaw tightened when Richard casually mentioned future plans for Rosalind's music career. She noticed the flash of hurt in Elizabeth's eyes when Mrs. Johnson reminisced about Rosalind's time living with them. It was all too much. The pressure, the divided loyalties, the constant need to be everything to everyone, it was tearing her apart. "Stop it," Rosalind suddenly cried out, her voice echoing in the quiet hallway. "Just stop it, all of you." Both families turned to her in shock, falling silent. "I can't do this anymore," Rosalind continued, tears streaming down her face. "I can't keep trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect friend, the perfect sister to everyone. I'm just one person, and I'm drowning here." She looked between the Montgomerys and the Johnsons, seeing the surprise and concern on their faces. "I love you all. You're all my family. But if you keep making me choose, if you keep pulling me in different directions, I'm going to end up losing all of you. And I can't bear that. I won't." With those words hanging in the air, Rosalind turned and fled, leaving both her families staring after her in stunned silence. As she ran through the hospital corridors, her vision blurred by tears, Rosalind felt as though she were running not just from that moment, but from the impossible situation her life had become. She had fought so hard to reclaim her memories, to piece together her identity. But now, caught between two families, burdened with secrets and expectations, she felt more lost than ever. The risk of losing both families, of destroying the delicate balance she had been trying to maintain, suddenly felt all too real, and terrifyingly close. As she burst out of the hospital into the cool night air, Rosalind realized that she had reached a breaking point. Something had to change. She couldn't continue to tear herself apart, trying to be everything to everyone. It was time to make a choice, not between her families, but for herself. With that realization came a sense of clarity. Whatever came next, whatever decision she made, they would have to be on her own terms. It was time for Rosalind Montgomery to stop trying to fit into the roles others had created for her and to start forging her own path. As she stood there in the hospital parking lot, caught between the world of the Montgomerys and the world of the Johnsons, Rosalind made a silent vow to herself. She would find a way to bridge these two parts of her life, to honor both her past and her present. But more importantly, she would find a way to be true to herself, even if it meant risking the loss of everything she held dear. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with potential heartbreak and difficult decisions, but as Rosalind took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever came next, she felt a sense of determination settle over her. She was Rosalind Montgomery, daughter of two families, friend, musician, and so much more. And she was ready to fight for her right to be all of those things, on her own terms. The old clock tower chimed midnight, its deep, resonant tones echoing through the deserted streets of Westbridge. Rosalind Montgomery stood in the shadows, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for her twin sister, Alexandra, to appear. The cool night air sent a shiver down her spine, though whether it was from the cold or from anticipation, she couldn't be sure. As the last chime faded into silence, a figure emerged from the darkness. Alexandra's face, so eerily similar to Rosalind's own, was etched with tension and urgency. "You came," Alexandra said, her voice a mixture of relief and wariness. "I wasn't sure you would." Rosalind stepped forward, her eyes searching her sister's face. "You said it was a matter of life and death." "What's going on, Alexandra? What kind of danger are we in?" Before Alexandra could respond, the sharp ring of Rosalind's phone cut through the night. She glanced at the screen, seeing Emma's name flash urgently. With an apologetic look at her sister, Rosalind answered. "Emma? What's wrong?" The panic in Emma's voice sent a chill through Rosalind's body. "Ros, you need to get to the hospital now. It's Dad. He's taken a turn for the worse." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Rosalind absorbed the news. Mr. Johnson, the man who had been a father to her when she had nothing, not even her memories, was in danger. She looked at Alexandra, torn between the sister she'd just met and the family that had taken her in. "Go," Alexandra said, her expression softening slightly. "Your family needs you. But this isn't over, Rosalind. We need to talk soon. There's so much you don't know." With a quick nod, Rosalind turned and ran, her mind reeling from the events of the night. As she hailed a taxi to the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to change irrevocably, once again. The hospital corridors were a blur as Rosalind raced to Mr. Johnson's room. She found Emma and Mrs. Johnson huddled outside, their faces etched with worry. "What happened?" Rosalind gasped, trying to catch her breath. Mrs. Johnson shook her head, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "The doctors aren't sure. His vitals suddenly dropped. They're in there now, trying to stabilize him." Emma threw her arms around Rosalind, seeking comfort in her friend's embrace. "I'm scared," Ross, she whispered. What if he doesn't make it?" Rosalind hugged her tightly, pushing down her own fear to be strong for her friend. "He's going to be okay," she said with a conviction she didn't entirely feel. "Your dad's a fighter. He's not going to give up without a fight." As they waited for news, Rosalind's mind wandered back to her encounter with Alexandra. What danger had she been talking about, and how did it connect to Mr. Johnson's sudden decline? The questions swirled in her mind, adding to the tornado of emotions already raging inside her. Hours passed, each minute feeling like an eternity. Rosalind paced the hallway, made countless trips to the vending machine for coffee that no one drank, and prayed to whatever higher power might be listening for Mr. Johnson to pull through. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through the hospital windows, a tired-looking doctor emerged from Mr. Johnson's room. The three women stood as one, their hearts in their throats as they waited for news. "We've managed to stabilize him," the doctor said, and a collective sigh of relief echoed through the small group. But he continued, his tone grave, "His condition is still critical. The next 24 hours will be crucial." Rosalind felt her knees go weak with relief and fear. Mr. Johnson was alive, but he wasn't out of danger yet. As she sank into a chair, the events of the past few hours came crashing down on her. The mysterious meeting with Alexandra, the warnings of danger, and now this, it was all too much. She felt a gentle hand on her shoulder and looked up to see Mrs. Johnson looking at her with concern. "Rosalind, honey, you look exhausted. Why don't you go home and get some rest? We'll call you if there's any change." Rosalind shook her head vehemently. "No, I want to stay. I need to be here." Mrs. Johnson's eyes softened with understanding. "I know you do, sweetheart, but you need to take care of yourself too. Mr. Johnson wouldn't want you running yourself into the ground on his account." Reluctantly, Rosalind agreed to go home for a few hours. As she made her way out of the hospital, she felt as though she were leaving a piece of herself behind. The Johnsons had been her anchor when she was lost, and the thought of losing Mr. Johnson was almost unbearable. The ride home was a blur, Rosalind's mind too full of worry and unanswered questions to pay much attention to her surroundings. As she approached the Montgomery mansion, she felt a strange sense of disconnect. This grand house, with its manicured lawns and imposing facade, seemed a world away from the warmth and love she had found with the Johnsons. Inside, she found her parents waiting for her, their faces etched with concern. "Rosalind," her mother said, stepping forward to embrace her. "We were so worried. Where have you been?" For a moment, Rosalind considered telling them everything about Alexandra, about the warnings of danger, about Mr. Johnson's condition. But something held her back. The memory of their secrets, of the years of lies about Alexandra's existence, made her hesitate. "I was at the hospital," she said finally. "Mr. Johnson, he's not doing well." Her father's brow furrowed. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything we can do?" Rosalind shook her head, suddenly feeling very tired. "No, I need to rest for a bit, but I'm going back to the hospital soon." As she climbed the stairs to her room, Rosalind could feel her parents' eyes on her back. She knew they were worried, knew they wanted to help, but right now their concern felt suffocating. How could she explain to them that the man fighting for his life in that hospital bed was more of a father to her than Richard Montgomery had ever been? In her room, Rosalind collapsed onto her bed, fully clothed. She meant to just close her eyes for a moment, but exhaustion overtook her, and she fell into a deep, troubled sleep. She dreamed of two worlds colliding, the opulent Montgomery mansion merging with the cozy Johnson home. In the dream, Alexandra stood at the center, her face a mask of urgency as she tried to tell Rosalind something important. But every time Rosalind got close enough to hear, Mr. Johnson's voice would call out to her, pulling her away. Rosalind woke with a start, her heart racing. The dream lingered, leaving her with a sense of foreboding she couldn't shake. Glancing at her phone, she realized she had been asleep for several hours. There were no missed calls from the hospital, no news was good news, she hoped. As she freshened up, preparing to return to the hospital, Rosalind caught sight of herself in the mirror. The girl staring back at her looked different, somehow older, more careworn. The events of the past few months had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She was no longer just Rosalind Montgomery, the amnesiac girl searching for her identity. Nor was she simply the prodigy pianist with a bright future ahead of her. She was something more complex now, a young woman caught between two families, harboring secrets that could change everything. As she made her way back to the hospital, Rosalind felt as though she was standing on the edge of a precipice. The life she had carefully reconstructed after losing her memories was about to be turned upside down once again. But this time she wasn't a blank slate. This time she had the strength of the relationships she had built, the love of two families, and a determination to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The hospital came into view, its imposing structure a stark reminder of the fragility of life. Rosalind squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever news awaited her inside, whether it was Mr. Johnson's condition, Alexandra's warnings, or the secrets her parents were still keeping. She would face it head-on. As she pushed through the hospital doors, Rosalind made a silent vow to herself. She would get to the bottom of Alexandra's warnings. She would uncover the truth about her family's past, and most importantly, she would be there for the Johnsons, the family that had taken her in when she had nothing. The girl who had once been lost had found her way not to a single family or a predefined future, but to herself. And now Rosalind Montgomery was ready to fight for the truth, for her loved ones, and for the life she wanted to build. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with open eyes and an open heart, drawing strength from the love of both her families and the resilience she had discovered within herself. As Rosalind stood in the dimly lit hallway of the hospital, caught between the worlds of the Montgomerys and the Johnsons, she felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. The tension that had been building for weeks had finally reached a breaking point, and she knew that something had to give. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number she had come to both anticipate and dread. Alexandra answered on the second ring, her voice taut with concern. "Rosalind? What's wrong?" Taking a deep breath, Rosalind steeled herself for what she was about to do. "We need to meet, now. There's something I need to show you." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Rosalind could almost see her twin sister's brow furrowing in confusion. "Okay," Alexandra finally said. "Where?" "The old clock tower." "In an hour." As Rosalind ended the call, she caught sight of her reflection in a nearby window. The girl staring back at her looked tired, worn, but there was a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was done being a pawn in someone else's game. It was time to take control of her own story. An hour later, Rosalind stood at the base of the clock tower, her grandmother's journal clutched tightly to her chest. She had discovered it hidden away in a dusty corner of the Montgomery attic, its pages filled with not just musical compositions, but also cryptic notes and what appeared to be coded messages. Alexandra emerged from the shadows, her face a mirror of Rosalind's own confusion and determination. "What's going on, Rosalind? What was so urgent?" Without a word, Rosalind held out the journal. Alexandra took it, her eyes widening as she recognized the significance of what she was holding. "Is this?" Rosalind nodded. "Grandmother's journal. But it's more than just music. Look." As Alexandra flipped through the pages, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock, and finally to a grim understanding. "This changes everything," she muttered, more to herself than to Rosalind. "What does it mean?" Rosalind pressed, her heart racing. "Does it have something to do with the danger you've been warning me about?" Alexandra looked up, her eyes meeting Rosalind's with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "It's not just danger, Rosalind, it's a legacy that's been hidden from both of us for far too long." As Alexandra began to explain, piecing together the cryptic notes in the journal with her own knowledge, a picture began to emerge that was far more complex and far-reaching than Rosalind could have imagined. Their grandmother, it seemed, had been more than just a talented musician. She had been involved in a secret organization dedicated to protecting musical prodigies from those who would exploit their talents for nefarious purposes. "But why keep it a secret?" Rosalind asked, her mind reeling from the revelations. "Why didn't our parents tell us?" Alexandra's expression hardened, because they were trying to protect us, or at least that's what they told themselves. But in doing so, they left us vulnerable. They left us unprepared for the legacy we were meant to inherit. As the twins stood in the shadow of the clock tower, the weight of their newfound knowledge settling over them, Rosalind felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly at the dangers that might lie ahead, anger at the years of secrets and lies, but also a sense of purpose, of finally understanding why she had always felt drawn to music in a way that went beyond mere talent. "What do we do now?" Rosalind asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexandra's eyes gleamed with a fierce determination. "We reclaim our legacy. We finish what grandmother started. But first we need to confront our parents. They've kept us in the dark for too long." With a newfound sense of unity, the twins made their way to the Montgomery mansion. As they approached the imposing front door, Rosalind felt a surge of courage. She was no longer the lost girl searching for her identity. She was Rosalind Montgomery, heir to a powerful legacy, and it was time for the truth to come out. Richard and Elizabeth Montgomery were in the study when Rosalind and Alexandra burst in. The shock on their faces at seeing the twins together quickly gave way to a resigned understanding. "I see you finally met," Richard said, his voice heavy with unspoken regret. Elizabeth reached out, her hand trembling slightly. "Girls, we can explain." But Rosalind cut her off, holding up the journal. "No more explanations, no more half-truths. We know about grandmother's legacy. We know about the organization. What we don't know is why you kept us apart, why you've been lying to us our entire lives." The next few hours were a whirlwind of confessions and revelations. Richard and Elizabeth, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and fear, finally unburdened themselves of the secrets they had been carrying for so long. They spoke of the dangers they had faced, of the difficult choices they had made in an attempt to protect their daughters. As the truth came pouring out, Rosalind felt as though the ground beneath her feet was shifting. Everything she thought she knew about her family, about her own identity, was being rewritten. But amidst the chaos of emotions, she felt a strange sense of clarity emerging. When the flood of revelations finally subsided, a heavy silence fell over the room. Rosalind looked at her parents, seeing them truly for the first time not as the perfect, distant figures of her childhood, nor as the deceitful manipulators she had recently imagined them to be, but as flawed, complex individuals who had been carrying an immense burden. "What happens now?" Alexandra asked, her voice breaking the silence. Richard and Elizabeth exchanged a look, years of unspoken communication passing between them. "That," Richard said slowly, "is up to you. Both of you. We've made our choices for better or worse. Now it's your turn to decide what to do with this legacy." Rosalind felt the weight of that decision settling on her shoulders. She thought of the Johnsons, of Emma still recovering in the hospital, of Brooke and the life she had built in Westbridge. Could she really walk away from all of that to embrace this newfound legacy? As if reading her thoughts, Elizabeth reached out, taking Rosalind's hand in hers. "Whatever you decide, know that we love you. Both of you. We may have made mistakes, but everything we did was out of love." Rosalind looked at her mother, then at her father, and finally at Alexandra. In her twins' eyes she saw a reflection of her own uncertainty, her own fear, but also a spark of excitement at the possibilities that lay ahead. In that moment, Rosalind made a decision. She wouldn't choose between her two lives, between the Montgomerys and the Johnsons, between her past and her future. Instead, she would find a way to bring them all together, to use her music and this newfound legacy to protect and inspire others. "I want to continue grandmother's work," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But I want to do it my way. No more secrets, no more lies, and I want to do it here in Westbridge, with both of my families by my side." Alexandra nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I'm with you, sister. Whatever comes next, we face it together." As the first light of dawn began to filter through the study windows, Rosalind felt a sense of peace settling over her. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still dangers to face, relationships to mend, and a legacy to uphold. But for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed with no memories, she felt truly whole. Rosalind Montgomery was no longer just a prodigy pianist or a girl caught between two families. She was the heir to a powerful legacy, a protector of musical talent, and a bridge between worlds. And with her sister by her side and the love of both her families to support her, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As she left the study that morning, hand in hand with Alexandra, Rosalind knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The next chapter of her extraordinary journey was about to unfold, and she was finally ready to embrace it with open arms and an open heart. The sun was setting over Westbridge, casting a warm golden glow across the town as Rosalind made her way to the community centre. Her heart was pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Tonight was the night of the grand charity concert she had organised, combining her grandmother's unfinished symphony with her own compositions. It was more than just a musical performance, it was a statement, a declaration of her new path forward. As she approached the building, she saw a crowd already gathering outside. Familiar faces from both sides of her life mingled together: her high school friends, the Johnsons, her biological parents, and even some of the mysterious figures from her grandmother's organization. The sight of them all coming together filled her with a sense of hope and purpose. Backstage, Rosalind found Alexandra pacing nervously. Despite their newfound closeness, her twin sister was still adjusting to life in the public eye. "Are you sure about this?" Alexandra asked, her voice tinged with worry. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Our lives will never be the same." Rosalind took her sister's hands in hers, meeting her gaze with a reassuring smile. "I'm sure. This is who we are, Alex. It's time we embraced it, all of it." As they prepared for the performance, Rosalind's mind wandered back over the whirlwind of the past few months. The revelation of her grandmother's legacy had set in motion a series of events that had transformed her life in ways she could never have imagined. Mr. Johnson's recovery had been nothing short of miraculous. As he regained his strength, Rosalind had finally found the courage to tell him and his family the whole truth about her biological parents, about Alexandra, and about the musical legacy she had inherited. And to her surprise and relief, the Johnsons had embraced her story with open minds and hearts. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Johnson had said, pulling Rosalind into a warm embrace. "We always knew you were special. This doesn't change how we feel about you. You'll always be a part of our family." Reconciling her two families had been a delicate process, filled with awkward dinners and tense conversations. But slowly, surely, bridges were being built. The Montgomerys and the Johnsons had found common ground in their love for Rosalind and in their desire to support her newfound purpose. Her relationship with Brooke had deepened, growing stronger as Rosalind finally allowed herself to be fully vulnerable and honest. Brooke had listened to Rosalind's incredible story with wide-eyed wonder, and then, to Rosalind's amazement, had simply shrugged and said, "Well, that explains a lot. But you're still you, Ross, and that's who I fell in love with." As for her music, Rosalind had thrown herself into it with renewed passion. Combining her grandmother's unfinished works with her own compositions had been a challenging but deeply rewarding process. Each note felt like a connection to her past and a step towards her future. Now, as she stood backstage listening to the murmur of the gathering crowd, Rosalind felt the weight of all these experiences, all these connections, settling around her like a comfortable cloak. She was no longer torn between two worlds, she was the bridge connecting them. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience. Rosalind took a deep breath, exchanged one last look with Alexandra, and stepped out onto the stage. The spotlight hit her, warm and bright, as she took her place at the grand piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, and in that pause she felt the presence of all those who had brought her to this moment: her grandmother, whose legacy she was continuing her biological parents, who had finally opened up to her, the Johnsons, who had loved her unconditionally. Brooke, whose unwavering support had been her anchor, and Alexandra, the missing piece of her life's puzzle. And then she began to play. The music flowed from her fingers, a blend of her grandmother's haunting melodies and her own passionate compositions. It told the story of loss and rediscovery, of secrets uncovered and truths embraced. As the symphony unfolded, Rosalind poured every ounce of her journey into the notes. From the corner of her eye, she saw Alexandra join her on stage, adding her own musical voice to the performance. The twins played in perfect harmony, their shared legacy manifesting in a duet that left the audience spellbound. As the final notes faded away, there was a moment of breathless silence. Then the auditorium erupted in thunderous applause. Rosalind and Alexandra stood, hands clasped, facing the standing ovation with tears in their eyes. In the front row, Rosalind could see both sets of her parents, the Montgomerys and the Johnsons, standing side by side, their faces shining with pride and love. Brooke was there too, applauding wildly, her eyes locked with Rosalind's in a silent exchange of love and support. As the applause continued, Rosalind stepped forward to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. This performance was more than just a concert. It was a celebration of family, both the ones we're born into and the ones we choose. It was about embracing our past while looking towards the future. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces before her. The proceeds from tonight's concert will go towards establishing a foundation, the Montgomery Johnson Foundation for Musical Education. We aim to provide opportunities for young musicians, to nurture talent wherever we find it, and to use the power of music to bring people together. The announcement was met with another round of applause, and Rosalind felt a surge of pride and purpose. This was her legacy, not just the musical talent she had inherited, but the ability to use that talent to make a difference in the world. As the evening wound down, Rosalind found herself surrounded by her loved ones. There were hugs and tears, congratulations and words of pride. But it was Brooke who finally pulled her aside, her eyes shining with love and admiration. "You did it, Ross," she said softly. "You found a way to bring all the parts of your life together. I'm so proud of you." Rosalind leaned in, resting her forehead against Brooke's. "I couldn't have done it without you. Without any of you," she added, looking around at her extended family. As they left the community center that night, walking out into the cool evening air, Rosalind felt a sense of peace settle over her. The girl who had woken up in a hospital bed with no memories had come so far, piecing together not just her past, but a future of her own making. She had found her voice in her music, in her relationships, and in her newfound purpose. And as she looked ahead with Alexandra by her side, her two sets of parents behind her, and Brooke's hand in hers, Rosalind knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges. There were still mysteries to unravel, talents to protect, and a legacy to uphold. But Rosalind Montgomery was no longer afraid of the unknown. She had the love of her families, the support of her friends, and a clear sense of who she was and what she wanted to achieve. As they walked into the night, towards a future bright with possibility, Rosalind smiled to herself. Her journey had been extraordinary, filled with loss and discovery, pain and joy. But it had led her here, to this moment of harmony between all the different parts of her life. And whatever came next, she was ready to face it with open eyes, an open heart, and the power of music to guide her way. In the symphony of life, we often find ourselves caught between different melodies, struggling to find our own rhythm. Like Rosalind, we may wake up one day feeling lost, our memories a blank sheet of music waiting to be filled. But remember, it's not about the notes we've forgotten, but the ones we choose to play from this moment on. As Mr. Johnson said, you have a gift that deserves to be shared with the world. Your gift might not be music, but we all have something unique to offer. Don't let fear or uncertainty hold you back from sharing it. Family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who stand by you when you can't even remember who you are. The Johnsons taught us that love doesn't need a shared past to be real and enduring. As Mrs. Johnson put it, you'll always be a part of our family. And to those carrying the weight of secrets, remember Elizabeth Montgomery's words, everything we did was out of love, even when we make mistakes. Love can be the bridge that brings us back together. Life will test you, pull you in different directions like Rosalind was torn between her two families. But as she learned, you don't have to choose. You can be the harmony that brings different worlds together. Brooke showed us the power of unwavering support when she said, "You're still you, Ros, and that's who I fell in love with in your darkest moments. Hold on to the people who see the real you, who love you not despite your struggles, but because of the strength you show in facing them." Remember Rosalind's words, this was more than just a concert. It was a celebration of family, both the ones we're born into and the ones we choose. It was about embracing our past while looking towards the future. Your past doesn't define you, but it can guide you. Your present is where you have the power to change your tune. And your future? It's a beautiful, unfinished symphony, waiting for you to compose it. So, like Rosalind and Alexandra playing their duet, find your harmony. Embrace all parts of yourself, the lost, the found, the still discovering. Let your life be a grand performance that brings people together, that lifts others up. Because in the end, we're all just trying to find our place in this grand orchestra of life. And when we do, when we finally play the music that's been inside us all along, that's when we create something truly beautiful. Something that, like Rosalind's performance, leaves the world breathless for a moment before erupting into applause. Your story, with all its high notes and low notes, is worth telling. It's worth living. So pick up your instrument, whatever it may be, and play your heart out. The world is waiting for your unique melody. Friends, as Rosalind discovered, dreams can change, and that's okay. Life's unexpected turns often lead us to the most beautiful melodies. Just as Rosalind found harmony between her two families, we hope this story has touched a chord in your heart. If Rosalind's journey resonated with you, if you felt the power of her music and the strength of her resilience, we'd love to hear from you. As Mr. Johnson said, we're all here to support each other, every step of the way. We feel the same about our audience. If you enjoyed this tale of rediscovery and unconditional love, please leave a comment with the number 1. Your support means the world to us, just as Brooke's support meant everything to Rosalind. Curious about what's next for Rosalind? Want to see how she navigates her newfound legacy and balances her two worlds? If you're eager for a part 2, comment with the number 2. After all, as Rosalind said, this is just the beginning. We'd love to know which character in Rosalind's story did you relate to the most, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your subscription is like the applause that filled the auditorium after Rosalind's performance. It motivates us to keep creating and sharing stories that touch hearts and inspire minds. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. As Rosalind learned, sometimes the family we choose can be just as important as the one we're born into. Who knows? You might be sharing a life-changing story with someone who needs to hear it. Lastly, if you found value in Rosalind's journey, please give this video a thumbs up. As Elizabeth Montgomery said, everything we did was out of love, and your likes help us continue doing what we love, bringing these stories to you. Remember, in the words of Rosalind, we aim to use the power of music to bring people together. By engaging with this story, you're becoming part of a community that celebrates resilience, love, and the beautiful complexity of human connections. Thank you for being part of our symphony.